everyone, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Berkeley Forum, From Chemist to Entrepreneur. It brings me great excitement. This is our last in-person event of the semester, so it's really great to be able to see everyone's faces and just be in this space with y'all. But before we start our event, we begin all of our events with a land acknowledgement, so I will begin that now. The Berkeley Forum acknowledges that UC Berkeley sits on the territory of the Huichin, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chichenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. And as members of the Berkeley community, it is vitally important that we not only recognize the history on this land on which we stand, but also we recognize that the Muwekma Ohlone people are alive and flourishing members of the Berkeley and broader Bay Area communities today. This acknowledgement was created by the UC Berkeley Division of Equity and Inclusion and co-created with the Muwekma Ohlone Tribe and the Native American Student Development Office. For more resources, feel free to check in with the Center for Communities of Engagement and Justice. And with that, I'd like to invite tonight's event manager to the stage, Brian Kim, to give some facts behind our speaker.
Thank you, Matara. So tonight I'd like to introduce Dr. Hoby Wedler. Dr. Hoby Wedler is a scientist, entrepreneur, and sensory expert. In 2016, he earned his PhD in computational organic chemistry from UC Davis, and born completely blind, he was able to navigate this field of organic chemistry. In 2011, Dr. Wedler founded a nonprofit organization to lead annual chemistry camps for blind and visually impaired students. And known also for his taste for wine, he has developed Tasting in the Dark in collaboration with the Francis Ford Coppola Winery. Through his journey as a blind chemist, he has become a motivational speaker, mentor, educator, and also entrepreneur. He has been recognized by President Obama as a champion change for his work for disability accessibility. With that introduction, I'd like to invite to the stage Dr. Hoby Wedler.
Well, thank you all. What an honor it is to be here. How's everybody doing tonight? Good. Let's see, am I standing in the right place?
Yes, you're good.
You know, we blind people, sometimes we give a whole talk and then realize we were facing the wall. You know? It's really an honor to be here with y'all. I would love to, just so that I know exactly who's in the room, go around and do quick introductions. Name what year you are and what your major is, just so we can all get to know each other a little bit. So I'll start. I'm Hoby. I'm way too old to have a major, I guess, and I'm coming to you tonight from Petaluma, so up north, about northwest of here, about 25 miles.
Yeah, I guess we can do like a snake from the front row to the back,
cool.
And do our best. So, hi, I'm Brian. I'm the event manager tonight, and my major is chemistry. Great.
Hi, I'm Ani. I'm a senior, and my major is EECS, and I handling tech tonight.
Nice.
I'm Tiana. I'm a third year studying biosciences.
I'm Jordan. I'm a second year and major is local science.
I'm Matara. It's my last semester, and I study computer science and music.
Last semester? That means you're done in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, December 17th, yes.
Oh, okay. Then you're not counting.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I'm a second year and I'm majoring in integrative biology.
Great.
I'm Oriana. I'm a junior and I'm majoring in political science and integrative biology.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Aaliyah and I'm a senior studying public health.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm a freshman and I'm majoring in global management.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Rohan. I'm a senior studying economics.
Hi, I'm Charles. I'm a junior studying business and data science.
Hi, I'm Riley. I'm a senior and I'm studying sociology.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Samantha. I'm a senior studying cognitive science.
Hi, Hoby. I'm Anna. I'm a second year studying psychology and interdisciplinary studies.
Fantastic.
Hi, my name is Jonathan. I'm a third year studying econ and stat.
Great.
Hello, I'm David. It's also my last semester. I'm studying economics and minor in data science.
Great.
I'm Daniel. It's also my last semester and I'm studying econ.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Crystal and I'm a third year studying data science econ. Hi, I'm Monet. I'm a third year and I'm studying public health.
Great.
I'm Ashley. I'm a second year and I'm studying business and data science.
Great.
I'm Daniel. I'm a junior studying computer science.
Fantastic.
I'm Carlos. I'm a second year studying chemical engineering.
Hi, I'm Wendy. I'm a senior studying political economy.
Great.
Hi, I'm Harry.
I'm a second year studying global management and global politics.
I'm Casey. I'm a second year studying staff and econ.
And that's everyone.
All right. Well, thank you guys for doing that. Just great to give me an idea of who's in the room, where people are, and it's all about visualization for me, and we'll get into that in a little bit here. I got to try to be quick, 20 minutes. So I was born totally blind, and one of the reasons that I've been able to do what I wanted to do with confidence is I attribute it to my parents, who have always, they've done two things amazing. Well, they've done many things amazingly well, but two that I'll call out tonight. One is that they've always had high expectations of me and my brother. My brother's 2 years older than me, and he's sighted. He's actually a Berkeley alum as well, studied business here. And we were held to the same standards. If there was a chore that needed to get done, maybe my chores were a little bit different than his, like different tasks, but we were held to the same standards and had to work, the same amount. So that was just wonderful. I was never, first and foremost, never Hoby, their blind son. I was Hoby, their son, who happened to be blind. The other thing my parents did that was truly incredible is they told us me and my brother, throughout our lives, that these were our lives to live. And we have to take responsibility for ourselves and our actions. And this was great. It was so wonderful and such a gift, really, if you can take responsibility and ownership for whatever happens. And if you succeed, you deserve to take the credit. And guess what? If you have a hard time and things don't work out as well as possible and maybe you fail at something, I don't like to use the word fail, but if something doesn't work out perfectly, you can take the blame for it. And that feels good because we are taking on our own challenges and we are taking responsibility for ourselves and whatever we do. And I think that's so powerful. Now, my parents were a little nervous when they had me and I was totally blind. They had no idea this was coming. I was born and the doctors said, oh, there's something wrong with his eyes. And then they realized that, oh, he can't see. Will he ever be able to see? We don't know. Probably not. And they were worried and freaked out about it for the first 12 hours of my life, I would say. Until my mom decided to call her best friend from college, a woman named Barb. And Barb's husband, Steve, answered the phone, and all she could hear on the other end was, oh no, oh, what are we gonna do? This is just absolutely terrible. My mom's friend grabbed the phone out of her hand and said, out of her husband's hand and said, what's going on? What are you talking about? And they got on the other end and said, yeah, Hoby was born and he's blind. And the friend said, blind? Oh, God, that's nothing. I thought he was dead based on the way you were acting. So if I ever write a book, it's going to be called I'd Rather Be Blind Than Dead. And, the nice thing there was that, and what we realized a little bit later on is that she grew up, my mom's friend grew up with her father, and her father's best friend was blind. He was an amazing handyman. He did all his own work. He fixed his dishwasher. He worked on cars, better than most sighted folks. And what she realized as a young age, growing up with someone who was blind naturally, she realized that, okay, I'm just going to move this mic around a little bit. This really isn't that big of a deal. And we really don't have to be so concerned about Hoby's blindness, because for her, it was something that she lived with for her whole upbringing. And I think when we're kids and when we're around people who do things a little bit differently, it's easier for us to take those things in and think about them and not let them hamper us and hold us back. So, long story short, I grew up, my parents had amazingly high expectations. They worked with a group called Blind Babies Foundation to really teach them the best ways to work with me and educate me as a young blind child. And they were just amazing in my life. And I always loved taking things apart, putting them together. I loved understanding how things worked, science. I can remember when I was, to the day, I was about to turn 4 years old, and I was standing in the kitchen, and I turned on the tap to get a glass of water. The water started flowing out of the tap. Now, I'd done this 100 times before, but I got to thinking, where's this water coming from? Is it magically appearing? How does this work? That led to a lot of questions and a field trip to the local water treatment plant. And I realized that water is actually being plumbed all over townships and cities and buildings and houses so that we can get water from the street right into our homes. And when you think about that, when you think about how sort of awesome that is, it makes you stop and think, wow, something that we take for granted, like running water. How cool is that? That literally is plumbed into our own houses, into our own buildings for us. A similar thing happened when I turned the vacuum on one day when I was, I think, 6 or 7 years old, and it roared to life. And I realized, no, what's happening? There's nothing except a cable, except a wired cord, connecting it to this thing that we call an outlet. What the heck's going on here? And that led me to appreciate the fact that, okay, so we're paying for electrons. My father did a lot of work in communications and actually worked for PG&E, the power company, for about 30 years. And what was amazing there is that, you know, he explained to me that, yeah, electrons are all around us. You know, we pay for electrons, and then when we're done using them, they get pumped right back into the ground. And I thought, what are we paying for? These electrons are coming right to us, and then we're like somehow using them, and they're just going right back into the ground. What do we mean by that? And I realized that we're not really paying for the electrons themselves. We're paying for the force, the electromotive force, which shoves them along through the wire and actually drives machines like a vacuum cleaner. Fast forward to my junior year of high school. I'd taken physical science in 8th grade and physical science again as a freshman, and I realized that I loved chemistry. There was just something about it that made sense to me. So when I heard that honors chemistry was being advertised as a course, I said, well, that's cool. Let me take it. You know, so I took the test. I got into the class. I scored well enough on the test. Now the instructor was in a bit of a pickle, because I don't think she expected a blind guy to want to take her honors chemistry. And she had so much concern about how are you going to do things? How are we going to make the lab accessible? And I worked with her, as well as the school district, to figure out that, hey, we can find a student, TA basically, who has taken the class before me. She was 1 year older, so she was a senior at my junior year. And she was able to totally assist me in lab and be my scribe when writing answers on tests and all these sorts of things. So it was really incredible to have someone there to work with, and someone not who did everything for me in the laboratory, but who was my eyes and could help me measure chemicals and mix things. But and this would persist all the way through college, I really like to do everything I can on my own to the best of my ability. And, you know, that involves setting up equipment in lab. By all means, that's what I want to do. But I always had an assistant in there as my eyes, and, you know, someone there for safety as well, the same person. And I was very, cared a lot about who I brought in and how they were trained, and had a whole procedure for that that's for another talk and another time. But suffice it to say, we worked out a way for me to study honors chemistry. Now, the instructor, who now is one of my biggest allies and friends and supporters and all this, would tell me, oh, Hoby, I think chemistry is going to be impractical for you. I know you really love it, but I don't know if it makes sense for you to study. This is a very visual science. Gosh, this is really too bad. And then she'd get up in front of the class and say, I hope all of you study chemistry. It's what we eat and drink. It's what we breathe. You know, chemistry is really everything around us. It's really how the world works. That made the physicists mad, but that's what she said. So one thing led to another, and I thought, I have to convince her that chemistry makes sense for me as a blind student. And I approached her one morning, I still remember, it was at the beginning of the second semester, like 8 a.m. before any students were there in her classroom. And I said, you know, you tell me all the time that chemistry really doesn't make sense. It's impractical for a blind person to study. It's too visual. And I thought about that, and I guess you're right. I mean, you definitely know more about this stuff than I do. But I have one comment to that, and that is that nobody can see atoms, right? Chemistry is a cerebral science. It'd be great for chemists if we could look out and see a molecule of oxygen just floating there in front of us. But the truth is, these molecules are far too small to see. All we can do is think about them in our mind and study them. And we use our eyesight to do certain things in the laboratory, like measure certain chemicals out, measure, you know, fluids and take masses of solids and all sorts of things. And we might use our eyesight to detect a color change, whether a gas is evolved or anything like this. But the truth is, the visible part of the spectrum, of the total electromagnetic spectrum, is only about 300 nanometers on a spectrum that's several meters long. So 300 billionths of a meter is all we can really see, right? That comprises visible light. So most of what we use and what we can detect, we need instrumentation. We can't look at these things with our eye. We can't watch the air around us and see radio waves coming in, right? We have to use other equipment which allows us to hear them. It's the same thing. So doing chemistry and studying chemistry for me became something that was just really, I was able to teach people that it was really quite accessible. I was honored to go out to UC Davis, and by the way, it was between Davis and Berkeley, and if you all remember the May 1st deadline of choosing the school, it was about 3:30 in the morning on April 30th, and I was sitting in front of the computer going, Davis, Berkeley, which one? And you know, growing up in Petaluma, which is a smaller town, made Davis feel a little more familiar, a little more comfortable. And I met someone really interesting from the Office of Disability Resources up there. So I ultimately decided on Davis, but my brother was down here and I'd gotten in here, so it's like, gosh, which school do we go to? You know, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Gotta pick the right one. And so that was, you know, I ended up going to Davis and studying chemistry. I knew at that point that I had the heart of a teacher, and I wanted to teach chemistry, okay? Now, to me, teaching chemistry was not working at an R1, you know, research institution as a professor and needed to teach a couple of classes on the side. I wanted to be a chemistry lecturer. And I wanted to be that guy that walks into a lecture hall full of 600 students on a Monday morning at 8 a.m. after a weekend of partying and say, get some of these students excited about chemistry. Well, I'd say 90+%, 95+% of all students in freshman chemistry are there because they have to be. It's the prerequisite to do what we actually think we want to do. And I want to be that professor who made things kind of fun and kind of exciting. And I went through my undergraduate. I fell in love with organic chemistry. Why would a blind guy love organic chemistry? It's a great question. And I have an answer for you, which is that organic chemistry is actually very spatial. So I had an excellent assistant who drew tactile diagrams and built amazing 3D models while I was taking organic chemistry. And you know, I put the time into what I studied. So I spent literally about 20 hours a week when I was taking intro organic chemistry for that whole school year. And that's what it takes. You know, if you can't see and you want to study something like chemistry, it just takes longer. And what I realized is that I'm a very spatial thinker, and I need to visualize everything around me, from how you guys are, you know, how your seats are arranged and what the desks look like in here, to the route that I would take to get from my house to the local supermarket. How do I get to the bus station? All these things are in my mind. And I realized that streets are connected much like molecules are connected. If you make atoms intersections and bonds the streets that connect them, there is no reason I can't make shrink distances in my mind from meters and kilometers down to angstroms and nanometers, and use the exact same skills I use for my survival as a blind traveler to think about organic chemistry. By the way, we can use the same skill set and turn these distances into light years. Think about cosmology, you know, how the universe is built. So there's no reason, and I actually feel like because I've never been able to see, and I've always had to visualize things in my mind, I actually had a bit of an advantage as an organic chemist. Now, because I knew I was a nerd and I wanted to teach and I didn't know what would work for me, I didn't want to have an assistant looking over my shoulder all the way through graduate school. And I figured that if I worked in an experimental laboratory, chemistry laboratory, that's probably what I'd have to have. So I also got a degree in U.S. history and was applying to U.S. history graduate programs when I met my graduate advisor. U.S. history programs throughout the state of California. I met my graduate advisor at Davis. He studies computational organic chemistry. So everything that we do is on the computer. And we were able to make that work accessible to me through a lot of 3D printing and in-house scripting, and frankly working with assistants to describe what the different features of the molecules that we worked with were, and how they were built and how they were positioned. So that was truly incredible. That journey was wonderful, and as I said, I wanted to teach those freshman chemistry classes at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, and Davis granted me that opportunity. I was honored, so I did my undergraduate and graduate work both at UC Davis, and part of that, you might find interesting as an aside, was because I had already proven and demonstrated to everybody who I worked with at Davis in the chemistry department that a blind person could think about and study chemistry. And I didn't really necessarily want to have to go to another department and re-show everybody and prove myself to everybody that, you know, what I could do and how I did things. So while in graduate school, I got the honor of teaching many different freshman chemistry courses. And what I realized, somewhat sadly, was that students didn't like to speak chemistry. They wanted a whole bunch of beautiful video animations and pictures showing things. They wanted me to say this here and that there and point to things. And that's hard when you're a blind chemist. I can explain chemistry to you really well. And I can even have some slides where we draw certain things out that are hard to talk through without visual aids. But that my students wanted so much visual animation and this sort of thing that I was spending a lot of time and money working with my assistants, and multiple assistants at this point, creating beautiful lectures and then working hard to memorize them so I could present them coherently and not talk about the wrong slide when I was on a certain slide. So that was always an experience for me. And frankly, while in graduate school, I started my entrepreneurial journey working with Francis Ford Coppola, hosting truly blindfolded wine experiences around the country called Tastings in the Dark. And what came of Tasting in the Dark is a super interesting sort of chain of events where I started meeting people in the sensory world, in the world of food and beverage, but also in the world of non-food and beverage sensory design. How does this car door sound when it shuts? How does this chair feel versus this other one? Basically, what I've done is I've carved, and I would never, once starting a PhD program, I've got to finish it. And I'm so happy that I did end up earning my PhD at the end of 2016. But what I would say here is that for me, entrepreneurship is my passion. It's my pride and joy right now. And I do a lot of work in the food and beverage industry on sensory consulting, on product development. We do a lot of sensory design work, designing ultra-luxury cars and properties and working with a lot of different food brands in that space. I'm also as a scientist, I'm also an artist, and I like to really straddle that beautiful intersection between art and science. So I co-founded a creative and marketing studio back in 2017, so we run that. And now I've just launched my first line of food products called Hobies Essentials, which is a line of gourmet seasonings. We have 2 right now, but we're planning to produce many more in the very near future, and we're really just elated about that. I also give back wherever I can. I'm on the board of directors of 2 nonprofits that are fairly local to me in Sonoma County. And just anytime I get the opportunity to come to events like this and talk to fine folks like you guys, it's really what I love doing. I do a lot of entrepreneurial coaching, and like I said, a lot of public speaking whenever I get the opportunity, because hanging out in a room full of people is where I thrive, and I don't know, Zoom just doesn't cut it. I'm sorry, but it's about people. It's about talking to people, and there are 3 messages that I'll leave you with this evening. The first one, and this is the most important of them all. Start with the most important. Be positive. If you aren't a positive thinker with an abundance mindset, with an attitude that you can do whatever it is you want to do, it is going to be so hard to achieve your goals and turn your dreams into realities. If you ever need to be reminded to think positively, by all means get a hold of me. And really and truly, if we can adopt this positive mindset and attitude of anything's possible, we can do whatever it is we want to do, then we're winning, and that allows us to have and feel and achieve so much success in our lives. So as you're budding here as college students and leaving Berkeley or just getting started at Berkeley, you can do whatever it is you want to do. The sky is the limit. And you know what? You are your biggest cheerleader, but you also, if you let yourself, are the biggest naysayer and the biggest barrier between you and turning those dreams into realities. So positivity is key. Number 2, always take on challenges. Because when we take on challenges and when we succeed, we win, right? We feel so good. We are motivated to take on the next set of challenges. And it feels good. It feels positive. It feels uplifting. So challenge yourself every step of the way. And number 3, this is really, really important to me. Don't compare yourself to other people. I've had plenty of times of comparing myself to other people. And when we do that, if we think that we're lesser than other people, we're always just going to feel walked on and squashed, right? And if we feel like we're better than other people, we're going to be cocky. What's the point of arrogance? I don't like that. So compare yourself to yourself. Be your best self, and the person who's looking in the mirror at you, and you get up, and you go to bed, and you do whatever you do, that's the only person we need to impress. And that's the only person we need to work hard for, right? taking those challenges, taking those responsibilities, and maintaining that positive belief in ourselves and without comparing ourselves to others, with that positive, abundant mindset, you can do whatever it is you want to do. I want to thank you for your time and now open it up for questions. Sorry that was longer than 20 minutes.
No, that was perfect. Perfect on the timing. What a wonderful address. That was so inspirational at the end. I really appreciated it. At this time, I'd like to invite our student moderator to the stage, Aaliyah.
How's it going?
Hi, it's going well.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. I think we can just go ahead and stand if you'd like, or would you like to take a seat?
How do you normally do that?
We normally sit.
Okay,
so
let's do
if
it.
you'd like to.
Sure.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Hoby, for that really inspiring talk. It was really wonderful to hear about your life story and to hear some of the wisdom that you've shared with us today.
It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you at Berkeley. I know you chose Davis initially, but it's wonderful to have you.
The judgment is allowed. The judgment is allowed, no problem.
Yeah, so for my first question of the evening, I want to expand more on some points you made in your talk and in previous talks as well. In a past TED Talk you made, when answering the rhetorical question, what is it like to experience the non-visual world so profoundly, you compared it to the experience of true, deep, compassionate love that is unlike anything else.
Yeah.
Expanding upon themes you discussed in your talk today about experiencing the world as someone who lives without sight, what drew you to make this comparison?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And what I was trying to do there in that talk from a few years back, thank you for reminding me of that, by the way. That was a fun talk. What the goal of that comparison was really to say to anyone who's, I'm just picking with this microphone, so it's not picking that much up. Really to help anyone and everyone understand that, you know, the one thing that we can feel and that we've all felt, it's just sort of within you. It's part of your being. If you really love someone, you've gotten that feeling, and you know what that sort of feels like, to just be at peace. And for me, not being able to see in a world of mostly sighted folks, I'm able to be at peace with things that are around me, with nature, with you know, in that talk as well, we compared, you know, I talked about standing on a hill and having a group of sighted people try to describe the hill and the landscape to me. It's like they didn't realize how much richer it was, you know, when you take away the sight maybe and just experience the non-visual sensory aspects around you. And I just kind of imagine when making that comparison, you know, let's just say you're sitting on the couch with someone who you just have that compassion and care and love for, right? You don't need to be able to see them. You don't need to be able to visually see them to see the depth of that person who you care tremendously about, or that place that you care tremendously about. We can have love for places too. And that's really what I was going for there, is to draw those comparisons and to provide a sense of feeling for people of how rich the experience of the world is, when people seemingly think that it might not be so rich when you can't see. How do you do things? How do you live? Actually, it's a much richer experience. And to that end, you know, I'm trademarking a phrase right now, which is, it's not what it looks like, right? What do I mean by that? Well, I don't think we should ever judge a book by its cover. If we see someone who doesn't look like someone we want to talk to, they might be wearing tattered clothes, or, you know, we judge people for 1,000 reasons, right? And we kind of stay away and keep our distance. But if you don't talk to people, you don't approach people, no matter what they look like, you won't know who they are. You won't open that book. So it's not what it looks like, and that applies to so many relationships and so many aspects of the world around us. And I think it sort of touches back on that topic of the world is actually quite rich without eyesight.
Thank you for making that connection to us, Hoby. In the same talk on sensory literacy, you discussed the richness there is into tapping into other senses besides sight alone. How can people use their senses together in a more interconnected and meaningful way?
Yeah, such a good question. It actually ties right back into the pandemic in a really interesting set of ways. A lot of people found that when they got COVID-19, they lost their sense of smell. For some people it was temporary. Some people I know and I've talked to contracted the virus a year ago and still haven't found their full sense of smell yet. And that's really scary, and I think what it made us realize is how sort of subconscious our sense of smell is, how little we sort of think about it, but how profound it is to our overall life experiences. So we use our eyesight to obtain 85 to 90% of the information from our surroundings that we take in, right? Which means that we have 4 other perfectly good senses that we only use to take in 10 to 15% of the world around us. That's a lot of senses for a little bit of information. And I think if we let our other senses tell us stuff, and if we think about what we're experiencing from them, we will be able to dig in and utilize them more. So when you have exercise for you, you go outside into the Berkeley air tomorrow morning, each and every one of you, smell the air. Think about what you smell. Do you smell eucalyptus trees? Do you smell food cooking? Do you smell exhaust? Do you smell green grass? What is it that you smell, that you take in? And using our sense of smell and hearing and touch and taste in some ways to experience the world around us is a good way, especially smell and sound, when we're just out in our surroundings, to ground ourselves and take away some of that stress. When you're driving to school or riding your bike to school or walking to school and you're stressed out, just stopping for a second. Being grateful, kind of like your land appreciation. Being grateful for where you are. Grateful for the land that we're on. Grateful for what we all have through all of our senses, not just our eyesight. That is hugely important.
Much of your entrepreneurial experience has revolved around enhancing sensory experiences for those who cannot rely on their vision. How, if at all, has your understanding of these sensory experiences contributed to your decision to lead the Tasting in the Dark seminar that you mentioned earlier in your talk at the Francis Ford Coppola Winery?
Yeah, so Tasting in the Dark started with Mr. Coppola, and then we brought it actually to all sorts of industries and markets around the world, which has been a ton of fun. Definitely understanding the world as a blind person, I knew that I had a different, and I know that I had a different understanding of it than sighted folks who I interact with and hang out with. And for me, it was really a thinking and a thought experiment of, hey, wait a minute, how can we all experience the world differently? And how can we create an opportunity for folks who otherwise use their eyesight all the time to really focus in on those other senses? What does the voices around you sound like? What does the chair beneath you feel like? What is what we're smelling and tasting? Smell or taste like, respectively. How can we experience the world without our eyesight? So we do this by temporarily blindfolding folks. And I would definitely say that I do not think this would ever show people what it's like to be like me. And I say, I'm not trying to show you a day in my life, because it'd be crazy to think that just by sitting here for an hour, you'd be able to experience life the same way I can. Rather, it's a way of focusing our senses and focusing our awareness and our ways of paying attention. What I've heard is that people focus so much more on what's being said and what they're tasting or whatever they're doing. So we've even done these experiences outside food and drink and outside of tasting anything, actually to teach empathy to high school students by having them do very high stakes activities in partnered pairs where one student is sighted and the other student, they're acting as an assistant, and the other student is blindfolded doing the work. The program that I put together and co-founded is a wood turning program where students would turn square blocks of wood on electric blades into beautiful rolling pins, candlesticks, you name it, bowls, whatever they really wanted to do. That to me is so special because it really taught them empathy and how to slow down and work with their hands and think with their minds. So taking away eyesight temporarily, which is our dominant sense, really can change our perspective and outlook in so many more ways than one.
As a follow-up to this question, how, if at all, can some senses be enhanced or subdued, depending on taking away one over the other?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we have to focus on the world differently. Like if you have, so I'll go back one step and say that a lot of people ask me, oh, do you think your hearing is better than anyone else's? And I'd say no. I don't think my hearing is any better than yours, Aaliyah. I really don't. But what I do is I have to use my hearing differently. So whenever I cross the street, I need to listen to cars and go with the cars that are going in the same direction as me and closest to me. We call that near parallel. And by going with near parallel traffic, I know that I'm safe from people making turns or people who are traveling perpendicularly in front of me. That's true at stoplights and stop signs. So I use my hearing to understand the world around me better and really to be a safe traveler. So my hearing, I don't think, is better. I just think I use it more, and it's a little more enhanced because of that. All really good, important questions that that you ask. I think that we can, if we just focus on our senses more. Next time you take a bite of food, think about how it really tastes. It's not just necessity, nourishment. It actually, someone prepared that for you. Maybe it was you. Maybe you got it somewhere else, but there's some love and some care put into that. So try to taste for it and pay attention to it, and that can really, if you think about these things, enhance your way of experiencing the world. I also, when I talk to musicians, they have a way of appreciating and experiencing the world that is a little through sound. It's a little bit more enhanced than other people because they need it for their careers. But if you want to or need to use your non-visual senses, I've found that's what really does it for us and enhances those opportunities and those senses.
Transitioning to questions about your entrepreneurial career, you recently co-founded SensePoint, a consultancy that encourages brands to broaden their advertising strategies beyond the senses of sight and sound. How, if at all, can brands diversify their sensory appeal?
Yeah, SensePoint, by the way, just a quick correction, has turned into more of a creative and marketing agency working with nonprofits and organizations trying to do good, but my personal consulting is definitely still involved in diversifying brands across multiple senses. And the one example that I would give initially that I think is really obvious is Apple. Think about the sensory experience, the lighting, the way their packaging feels, the way the store sounds. That every Apple product you interact with has a similar feel to it and a similar sort of appearance. And frankly, if you go right down to the smell, a similar smell. What brands aren't thinking about often enough is that, they're thinking about how they look, they're thinking about the design, how the products are featured, all these sorts of things, when really what we need to be thinking about is the other four senses are always turned on, they're always delivering information to us, but we might not be conscious of it. It might be a little bit of a subconscious thing. So by focusing in on our non-visual senses, brands can enhance themselves and be more pleasurable to the consumer without the consumer necessarily even knowing it. I think Apple does a really good job of that. I think Nike does a good job of that. A lot of stores infiltrate scent into their buildings. But I just think that 99% of brands need to think more deeply and more profoundly about how they approach the world using multiple senses. And I think that people are not necessarily as literate as they could be in all five senses. So where people have used me, brand owners have used me, brand decision makers, is to really help them think about what is working and what could be changed to even further enhance the multi-sensory appeal of their brand.
Thank you. What advice, if any, would you give to entrepreneurs and innovators, as you mentioned, to develop more inclusive and equitable products?
A couple of things there, really good questions. I'd say that first of all, diversity is a really important thing. And I don't mean just hiring a diversity officer for your company and then checking the box and saying that, okay, you're done. I feel that diversity comes from HR, comes from who we hire to run teams, to run companies, et cetera, et cetera. And the more diverse the workforce we have, the more perspectives we have at the table, and the better we're going to be at solving problems. So if we're trying to solve any business problem, I think a more diverse team, when I'm talking to people who are totally for profit, I say diversity will increase your bottom line because it will allow you to come up with better decisions and more diverse and proactive solutions. I'd also just say that entrepreneurship is not about power and money to me. Hey, I'm lucky if I can put food on my table at the end of each month. I'm kidding about that. But really, entrepreneurship is about using business to solve significant and insignificant problems. But really, any business should be the solution to a problem. And should be designed to help people. We should all be working for good.
In what ways do you think can assistive technology be better integrated in our daily lives?
Oh, that's interesting. It's a great question. I just gave a talk at a Livable Design Summit all about interior design and appliances that don't use assistive technology. You know, it'd be so easy to interface any given appliance that has a touch screen in my kitchen or laundry room or bathroom with an iPhone, you know, an iOS app, so that I could drive it with my iPhone. It would also be similarly easy to make these devices talk, right? Or to make them so that when you turn them off, they always start on the same screen. One super annoying thing about my washer and dryer is that my dryer, when you turn it off, it starts back up right in the home screen, right? So I know it has LEDs that you have to push as buttons, which are inaccessible to me, which is annoying, makes it hard to do laundry, but I have one setting that I put a dot on that I can feel and set my laundry no problem. My washer, whenever it's turned off and turned back on, it comes right back to where it started, where it was left off. And there's no home button, right? On your iPhone, you can press the home button and go back to your home screen. It makes it darn near impossible to know where I am and what I need to push to make a little laundry happen. And you know what happens with appliances is that if they're not, if you know, all the users, or as many users as possible, are not thought about in the overall design of those technologies and products, I feel like I'm not the disabled one. The technology is actually forcing me to be disabled. So where we can make something that is inclusive and talks or has, you know, not LED lights on it or whatever the case may be, you know, with a touch screen on it. Why don't we do that and allow people, you know, give people the power who might be blind or visually impaired like myself to be able to do things on our own and not feel even more disabled by modern day technology. You know, my iPhone is, Apple is all about the touchscreen, right? But it's the most accessible out of the box device I've ever used. I mean, I can scroll through things and hear where I am and just use it the same way anyone would use anything. So it's an example of how something that is seemingly inaccessible is made extremely accessible with a little bit of engineering and innovation. And that's the message that I would give any manufacturer of technology or appliances, is just think about the large audience. And oftentimes with design thinking, if you help one group succeed, you're actually helping many, many others. I've got stories there.
Thank you so much for the uplifting message. For the sake of time, this will be my last question of the evening before we transition to audience questions. So you mentioned that the mentors you had at UC Davis were pivotal in shaping your curiosity and drive to receive a PhD in OChem. What else helped you succeed throughout your graduate studies, and what advice would you give to our audience who are mostly composed of undergrad students who may have any doubts in pursuing their STEM or just general undergrad education?
You gotta believe in yourself. You gotta be able to know that you can do this if you want, and you gotta be willing to work long hours and not give up. You know, and by the way, you need to take one big challenge, like graduate school or your undergraduate career, and turn it into as many little bite-sized challenges as you can. That saved me through grad school. I remember the night that I was welcomed in and we went to the welcome party and the whole thing. I was like, okay, now I'm getting my PhD. It was the first day of classes, fall quarter of 2011. I got back to my house and I thought, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? This is really daunting. And I realized that, no, just get through the first class. Get through the first day of the first class. Get through the next class. Get through your first summer of research and then take your qualifying exam. Okay, all these hurdles, what you do is you take a cliff and you install a bunch of steps. And if you can install those steps that you can climb up at a level and a pace that you feel comfortable with, you will succeed. You will succeed. But the mentor piece is so important. Find people who believe in you. Mentors are amazing to have because they see a future in us before we necessarily see it for ourselves. And if we can find those mentors and learn from them and grow from them and appreciate life because of them, that's when we win and that's when we thrive. But put those steps on the cliff. Never hesitate to carve steps into cliffs.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wedler, for your inspiring words. So I will now be opening it up to the audience to ask any questions they may have. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Right, Brian?
I was just wondering, like, your past work involved, like chemistry camps for like visually impaired and blind students. So I'm just wondering, like, how did that like process go about? Like, what was the curriculum building like, especially for a science that's like so quote unquote like visually like founded upon?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So we found very specific hands-on organic chemistry experiments that our students could do. One was synthesizing esters. So an ester is a combination of a carboxylic acid, which stinky, smells like vinegar or sweat or something like that, and an alcohol, which doesn't really smell like much. And they usually form together to form beautiful, fruity, delicious smelling compounds. So if anyone's ever eaten butterscotch, that is ethyl propanoate. So take propanoic acid, which is one carbon longer than vinegar, but basically tastes like really strong vinegar, and add in ethanol, that's drinking alcohol, and add a little bit of acid as a catalyst, you will get butterscotch, ethyl propanoate, and students could tell when that reaction was complete because we would have them smell using fans, and they would smell the butterscotch ester form. We also did titrations, which are basically mixing acid and base to form something that's neutral, titrating an acid with a base or vice versa. We often use color indicators, right? Things that change color so that we know, but we can use things that change smell. Onion and garlic are great acid-base indicators, for instance. If you put them in base, they don't smell like anything. If you reacidify, they start to smell really strong. So we did chemistry, but the most important point of those camps was to show students that they didn't have to worry, that they could do and follow whatever path they wanted, no matter how visual it seems, right? If we're doing chemistry here, that arguably might be one of the most visual subjects, they can do whatever it is they want to do successfully.
How, if at all, does your STEM or scientist background help your entrepreneurial efforts?
Oh man, once a scientist, always a scientist. That's a great question. And I really feel that what I like to do is I use my scientific background to help me solve problems in business. And it works really well because we can use kind of the scientific method. And it just gives me a new approach for life, having a deep understanding of something like organic chemistry and the, way that I had to study it, or not had to, the way that I got to study it, gives me a new approach to life that really helps me when going out and starting new business ventures.
Yeah, go ahead.
What gaps do you think currently exist in the education system for students with disabilities?
It's a great question. I think there are quite a few of them in terms of students not necessarily being thought of as equal, and I think that students just need to be included as much as possible and not pulled out into exterior classrooms, or certain students of course need specialized educations, but as much as we can integrate students with disabilities into non-disabled classrooms, it just helps everybody thrive because we learn from each other. I learn from my non-disabled students, and let me tell you, by having me in class, sitting up front, putting my hand up all the time, asking professors what they're writing on the board, or teachers asking what they're writing on the board, slow them down enough that help the other students also follow. And I've heard that on numerous occasions. So really embracing the way that students with disabilities might learn is pretty incredible, pretty important.
That is all the time we have this evening for questions. So thank you so much for the audience for asking questions and for coming today to hear Dr. Wedler talk.
Thank you all so much. And by the way, don't be strangers. I brought cards, and feel free to grab them off the front table here. Reach out to me anytime. The more the merrier. That's the abundance mindset thing. We all can be friends.
We're actually not done yet. There's like a joke I could have made there, but I didn't make it in time. But before we end, as we do at all of our events, we like to thank our speakers for coming. Well, first, that Q&A session was amazing. Let's give it up for that. And we'd like to thank all of our speakers for coming with a poster that is made by one of our members on our communications team. And tonight is no different. This poster, which has again, I've never taken a chemistry class, not even high school. It's so embarrassing. But it has what I imagine to be some sort of chemical being poured into a beaker. There's no beaker.
It's a wine bottle.
Oh, it's a wine bottle! It's a wine bottle in Puerto Rico, which makes even more sense.
Who did this creative design? That's awesome.
This design was made by Flora Fan. She's our graphic manager, so she's in charge of all the graphics. It's really pretty. And there's like something, and there's also like organic molecules in the background, which is pretty cool. So yes, tonight's event couldn't have happened without a bunch of work behind the scenes. So I'd like to thank tonight's event manager, Brian Kim, as well as some of our communication and finance leads, Will and Ayushi, our amazing poster designer, Flora, and tonight's wonderful moderator, Aaliyah. Thank you for coming. If you'd like to give us feedback, feel free to fill out the tinyurl.com/tbffeedbackf21. Feel free to like us on Facebook or visit our website. We have one more event for the semester on December 1st. We'll be having Eric Singer. So please come to that one. It'll be online, but we will still continue to operate in the spirit of great discourse. With that, I'd like to give out one more applause to our wonderful speaker of the night. And I hope everyone has an amazing night and gets home safe.